the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm really good.
I recently read a quote, and it couldn't have been more spot on, and it said that you could never train too hard for a job that has the potential to kill you.
That's a really good quote.
One thing that a lot of people may not consider when it comes to training for a job that has the potential to kill you is that there are elements of softness and even emotional intelligence that contribute to that training.
Yeah, being able to, and I think that is something that from like the onset of my career in law enforcement, you're not given all the tools necessary. You're given the tools on how to be safe at work, how to approach incidents in different dynamics, no matter what may be occurring, but how to create that balance, how to have that emotional resiliency is something that I don't think they necessarily prepare us for.
You know what's crazy is that the academy doesn't train any kind of emotional skills, but they do expect emotional endurance.
Yes. And I think like I'm going through like new guys coming into our department, and I know the dynamic has shifted throughout the years to where they're providing some type of resiliency training, and they're providing some like peer support type stuff. But when you're in the academy, I think it's hard to truly understand how you're going to emotionally respond to different situations if you've never been in them, if you've never experienced anything like it before, because you don't know how you're going to react. So, I mean, it gives you some tools for your tool belt, but I think that's where, as departments, we fail on the external side, on the back end of being able to keep that updated, to keep the responsiveness associated to those types of trainings, especially with the ever-changing field of resiliency that's there.
Yeah, and I think too, we're still at a place in time where there's this huge generational gap of the people who have more emotional intelligence and then those OGs who are more of the like suck it up type.
Yeah, and that's where like I see it day to day, to where us that have been around, it's more just, we're raised with rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. And now these new guys they want to try to have that appearance that they're rub some dirt on it and they'll be fine. But in all reality, internally, they're like all twisted up. They're going through some hardships and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, and there's those people that are in the middle where they have this fear of being seen as unreliable if they express any kind of emotion. Yeah,
I think I see guys and gals that they fear it as a sign of weakness, and there's a time and place. Like, you're not going to be in the middle of the field on a call where you're going to have an emotional response, but if you need to go back to the station, take a break for a little bit, like, that's okay to do that.
I've had a few people, like, this is one of the biggest compliments, say, like, even though you don't have a child, you are a mother to all. And it's so humbling to hear something like that. And I'm sharing that with you because I get text messages and messages in my DMs all the time of just people coming to me in the same way that I would have with my mom about, like, hey, listen, this is what's happening. And I think that it's so important to make sure that you do have an outlet, somebody that can validate your experience and maybe even give you some tough love on when you do need to toughen up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think especially for you, you're able to take that 1,000-foot view and be able to sit back and analyze everything associated to it, whether it's that tough love or whether it's something coming from love. You're able to break it down to people, to give them the true facts that they need to hear. They might not always like it, but they need to hear it.
One of the most beautiful things to see is when I will see a call and an officer might show up to somebody's house, or maybe he pulls a driver over. And the first thing that I notice about him is his candor and how calm and compassionate and just willing to connect that he or she might be to the individual that they're coming into contact with. And I think that a lot of people might underestimate how important it is to have empathy in order to be able to improve and even de-escalate situations or build community trust with people.
I can tell you throughout my entire career, that's one thing I'm a firm believer in, and is having that, being empathetic, being compassionate towards your response into dealing with people. There's going to be people, of course, you can't be empathetic towards or compassionate towards because you have to effect an arrest, but it doesn't mean that you have to treat them like crap.
Yeah, and I think too that showcases immediately that you're not that type of officer who is just out for that power grab, and you're not instantly creating this distance of superiority between you and the community.
And that's where this younger generation that's coming in, they have this sense of power over people, and they cannot put themselves in that person's shoes to say, this is how I would want to be treated by this, because they haven't had exposure to be in that situation to where they're treated like crap by someone who they're trying to get help from.
Yeah, and those people, I can guarantee you, they have some of these signs that are resisting emotional growth. And one of them is that they might default to sarcasm or even silence during real and raw conversations. Another might be that they're completely dismissive when somebody does reach out to them with struggles, because to them, they see it as a weakness. And they might also completely disregard any kind of feedback or even get defensive whenever they're challenged. And I know we see that one a lot.
Yeah, you start laying on the Band-Aids to not address the issues, to not, change something. And I think one of the biggest problems that people in that seat kind of deal with is they don't want to change, and they don't think they're doing anything wrong. And, sometimes from the supervisory aspect, sometimes it has to be discipline. Sometimes it has to be just a scolding, or sometimes you just won't ever be able to bring them to this reality unless something tragic happens to them or near them.
Yeah, I recently had to spend like a 10-hour day at the range and doing this whole stupid class. And so I told you I was not feeling good at all. And I was sitting on the couch. You gave me some electrolytes. Like, I drove there, and I had to explain to you when I had my little lunch break that I literally felt like I was fighting for my life. I had my radio on silent, and I was box breathing the entire time. And the only thing I wanted to do was to just turn around and come back home. And I shared that vulnerability with you just so that it would well, first of all, we have that kind of relationship anyways, but it showcased that I'm not ever like that. And so me expressing that kind of vulnerability to you, what you did for me in return, it meant everything, because you packed my lunch for me to be able to go. You already knew I wasn't feeling good. You thought I needed to go an hour earlier, and you were really, really sweet. Like, it's going to take you about a half an hour to get there, thinking I needed to leave right now, but not wanting to say like, you need to get up and go. And, I came home, and you were just really sweet and kind for the entire night after. And I think that it's important to understand that you're not necessarily feeling soft whenever you're showcasing how you're feeling. If it's not you being the one who's so powerful and in control all of the time, that kind of vulnerability is important for you to be able to share with other people, not only to give the gift of somebody else being able to help you, but also for you to be able to receive the things that you might need in terms of support during the time that you're feeling that way.
Yeah, being able to support one another and build that relationship with others, being able to not only being able to do that for others, but be open to receiving it from others too, because that could be half the battle. Is if you're not willing to accept that support and that willingness of someone being there for you, it's going to create that dynamic on a different end, and it's a relationship, and it works both ways.
When I went to a conference last year, I was standing in line for something, and I had a female come up to me with a microphone, and she was complimenting me on something, I don't know, my makeup, and she asked me if she could interview me. And I paused and I looked at her and I smiled and I said, usually I'm all about this. I'm a podcaster and I love creating content, but I'm here at this conference by myself. And I told myself that I was just going to carve out time for me, and I don't really feel like talking to anybody right now. And she paused and looked at me dumbfoundedly. And she says, you know what? I really respect you giving me boundaries like that. And I'm showcasing that as an example of how important it is to make sure that you understand what it is that's going on with you, because the external world is still going to revolve and adapt in the way that it will anyways. So if you don't interfere with something like a boundary, or you don't make it clear as to what it is that you want or what you need in that moment, the world is not going to accept any kind of change because they don't know otherwise.
Yeah, if you just kind of shelter off and just say no, then it's just going to create that dynamic to where you're not having that, creating those boundaries. You're not creating that it's okay to feel this way for yourself, and inherently people will start forming that opinion or conclusion on you.
Yeah, and with that particular situation, I create content every single day for a living. And, I specifically told you, Clint, before I left, like, here's my plan. I'm going to go. I want to learn. I want to sit there and just be in my own zone, like nothing else exists around me, and just go to this conference and get what I went there for, and not involve anyone else. I didn't want to talk to anyone else. And that's how I like to do. That's the whole point about it. And so it's important to just have those boundaries, but then to know what you want and then express it if you need to. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.